What's going on, content creators? I'm the host that loves you the most, Ozeal, and I want to welcome you to another episode of The Creator Factor. Now, today's guest is someone who I had the honor, the pleasure of connecting with on his podcast a couple of years ago. And since then, I've been following his journey as a content creator, as an entrepreneur, as a coach, a music artist and producer as well. He's toured internationally, releasing 30 plus albums. And my man's also the founder of Podcast Farm, podcast-farm.com, where he helps organizations and brands launch podcasts and develop their content marketing strategy. Let's dive in, creator fam. Let's welcome to the show none other than my man, Kaylee Marks in the house. What's going on, Kaylee?
Yo. Great to be here, man. It's always good to talk to you. You hold such great space. So thanks for having me on.
I had to ask you to be on the show because I remember I had a great conversation with you on your podcast, on your old podcast back in the days, Be On Air. I remember it was such a memorable podcast episode, man, because I felt like it was very much like my vibe here with Creator Factor. It was conversational. We went deep, and I was like, you know what? Let me get my man, because I've been following your journey, Kaylee, and I've been watching you from the sidelines, and I've been seeing you grow, as I mentioned in the intro, as a content creator, but also as an entrepreneur. Before we get into the entrepreneurship, though, let's talk a little bit about, because I don't know too much about the origin story. So let's begin there. Talk to me about your creator origin story. And if you could share with us that story of when you discovered, wow, I'm a creator and this is what I'm going to be pursuing.
That's a fun question, man. I appreciate you asking that. Actually, it just made me think. I don't usually contemplate that. I think some of the first videos, it's twofold. On one side, there's music, and on the other side, there's magic. And so on the music side, I remember it was probably Windows 98, maybe it was Windows XP, Sound Recorder, which is this little app that all it would do is record like a minute of audio, and there was no layers. It was just one track. It was a voice memo recorder. But what you could do is you could record one of those, and then you could open up a new one and record onto that one. So you could do this really janky loop thing where you could multi-track that way. And I got obsessed with recording little guitar loops and ideas and playing with interlocking melodies. And so that on one hand, there was the music side, which was really fun. And I got really into that. And then on the other hand, there was magic, and I homeschooled. So I didn't have a massive social community where I was. It was a lot online. And this is the days before Skype, way before YouTube. This was like E-Bombs World, and just a very interesting time in internet history. And I started to link up with different communities of magicians online. And one of the things that everyone would do is record little videos of different magic trick ideas. You know, we're all kind of inventors as magicians. We're definitely have an engineering brain and always coming up with new ways to pull off illusions. And so we're sharing with each other. So I was pretty into that, just recording lots of magic and uploading it to these very niche magic sites. And that kind of set me off of just this idea of like, hey, I could share my passion, through audio, through video, share that with the world and build friends, build community, learn from people, teach people. And I think that's really where it started.
Very similar to my journey. We were both involved in music as well. I was in love with making music. I was also a vocalist for an alternative hip hop band down here in Houston, and then discovered my passion for podcasting back in like 2009. And I'm curious to know, being a musician yourself and also being a podcaster, I'm curious to know, how do you see those two things, those two mediums intersecting, and how has one influenced the other in your journey?
Yeah. Audio storytelling, man. I mean, back before the pandemic, I was in a a band. We were touring. We reached a pretty good amount of success. Our music's been licensed and used in a lot of Netflix shows, Hulu shows,
You've
Apple
done some big
Plus
things, man.
shows.
Yeah.
We've been very fortunate, and it's not only, we don't get all the credit. We have an amazing manager, an amazing publishing team, but we've been very fortunate to get the music out there. And so I was full on into music. I was producing other artists, recording my music. We were touring, and the pandemic happened. I was also teaching music to kids after school. And a couple of things happened. One is my kids started to do podcasts almost accidentally because one of the programs that we used had a conversational podcast feature. And so the kids started to go to separate sides of the rooms and like talk to each other. So that just stuck in my brain. I didn't quite know at the moment that that's what I wanted to do, but that was there. And I started to pick up clients who needed audio work, and as a music producer, you're an audio engineer, so you know how to deal with audio.
Right.
You know how to tell stories with audio. Music's all about, the build and release and a narrative through sound. So it's kind of a logical next step to go into podcasting. And obviously there's so many different kinds of podcasts. There's just, what we're doing. There's episodics, kind of editorial podcast, more like an NPR show or something that would require a lot more of those kinds of skills from a music producer. But slowly, as I grew Podcast Farm, I just leveraged all those skills. So I was doing all my own editing at the beginning, and then I started hiring other editors. And then that's kind of how I transitioned into just purely entrepreneurial business owner life. But editing and telling a story through sound is really powerful because, we need all of our senses. We have our 5 or 6 senses, depending on what you believe. And, the sense of hearing is super potent. You can trigger a lot of emotion through that. For instance, as you know, if I'm telling this story, or if I'm saying some piece of information and there's nothing underneath my voice, it can sound really dry, have a flat affect. If I add something inspiring or something kind of aggressive and epic, it'll just completely transform the vibe of what I'm saying. It could turn it into something really motivational. And so there's a lot of power in mixing music and mixing the audio side of the conversation of podcasts. And that's really where you get these viral little clips going. TikTok and Instagram and YouTube Shorts, it's all about playing with audio and playing with video together.
And playing with stories, which is you're a big believer in, and I'm with that, man. I think when I'm hearing, obviously, being involved in music and magic and teaching, there's definitely a correlation between your past and the work that you're doing. And I've been having these conversations with creators, and that's why I think that origin story is so important, to revisit that. So not so we can discover ourselves, but to rediscover who we are, and then being able to connect that. Because often, Kayla, I want to get your thoughts on this. It's like we go through life and we get all these responsibilities, and we're handling adulting as much as possible, and then people are like, where's my passion? Like, I'm not passionate about this. I'm like, it's in your origin story. Like, you can go back, and it's been cool kind of to take a deep dive in my own past to see, oh man, like, it wasn't podcasting, but there are other aspects that I was doing very similar to you, with teaching, organizing events, music, storytelling, performance. This is what we're doing. And it's just amazing. So that's why, for our creators that are watching and listening, I encourage you to get into the origin story, to be able to kind of connect and put the pieces together to give you that clarity that a lot of creatives struggle with. You want to add on to that? What do you think, man?
I mean, honestly, just hearing that makes me think Seth Godin has this fantastic podcast. It's all like 20-minute episodes called Akimbo. And he has an episode on origin stories. He tells his origin story. He tells it brilliantly. And he kind of talks about it in terms of the moment everything changed, and finding these pillar moments in our life where everything shifted. And it's a fantastic episode. It's a fantastic podcast. If you're interested in podcasting, it's a masterclass in how to structure a simple, repeatable, high quality show. But that episode in particular is wonderful. And yeah, no, I just resonate with everything you said, man.
Well, you said my 2 favorite words, Seth Godin, because he's actually one of my favorites, and he actually inspired my first podcast. And big fan of Seth Godin. Anybody who doesn't know who Seth Godin is, like this marketing guru. He's been around for ages, but super knowledgeable, and I highly also recommend. I need to go back and revisit that podcast, man. I didn't know it was still active, but I subscribe to his blog and get all his content on a daily. So
Yeah,
great recommendation, man. Great recommendation. Let's talk a little bit about what we, because what I've seen with you is, you just released a new single, correct? Not too
indeed.
long ago. And, one of the things that really inspired me about that, Kaylee, is just I've gone away from the music, and I think as creators we get involved in other things, but we let go of the things that brought us joy. And music again brought me a lot of joy, but it's just seeing you just innovate and still create music.
Mm.
How do you stay motivated, man, to still do all the things that you do, but yet go back to where I would like to call home, where you like
Mm.
to create music and still be inspired to create?
Yeah, man. It's a good question. It's not easy, that's for sure, right? Like we have responsibilities, there's daily stressors, there's the
Mhm.
money component, we need to make
Yeah.
money. I am a believer that art is inherently valuable, that
Mm.
the creative process, our creative expression is necessary. I interviewed a friend of mine, Shrikala, on a somewhat recent episode, and I think it's titled something like "Creative Expression as a Life or Death Practice" or something like that.
Mm.
And he mentioned something in there about what would happen if I treat my creative process as a life or death thing.
Mm.
We need to eat, we need to sleep, we need to drink water, right? I'm not going to go risk my life in certain ways, so I wouldn't risk going a day without dedicating some time to expressing my creativity in some way.
Mm.
And that was a really powerful conversation for me, and makes me think about it. There's a word in Sanskrit called sadhana, daily practice. And so I try to think of it that way, because it also relieves a little bit of the pressure. It's not like I have to write a hit. I just need to get the guitar out and strum it a little, or I just need
Right.
to write a lyric, or I need to make a beat, or draw something, or maybe it's just writing. Whatever it is for you, it could be movement. Everyone has their own thing. For some people, it's cooking. But that's huge for me. And then there's this idea of one art form informing another art form. So music can inform my business. It can inform what I'm doing
Mm.
in the professional space. Music can inform video. Video can inform music, can inform painting, can inform sculpture. And you start to get some really interesting iterations when you do it that way. So I also use it as a tool to come up with new ideas and stay interested. And I think that's a huge component too, is to how do we not burn out? Well, we stay inspired and we stay connected with our why and our purpose. So finding those things for each of us, if you're listening, like those things that fill you up are fuel and are a key component to being able to continue doing whatever hard work. So if you're listening to this, I would imagine that you're probably interested in some level of entrepreneurial pursuit, or at
Mm.
least creative output, and being seen and being recognized in some way. So kind of tapping into those passions. And we live in an amazing place where there's so many people out there, so many creators that have made a massive living off of just sharing what they love.
Yeah.
Video game streamers, reviewers of movies,
Mhm.
chefs and cooks, simple things like ASMR, or
Mhm.
they buy things and open and unbox them. There's feng shui consultants that just help look at people's rooms and say what they would do differently. Doesn't have to be complex, it doesn't have to be hard, but when you love what you do and you share that, there's something inherently intriguing. I even think Skrillex said something once in an interview, that there's just something inherently awesome about watching someone have a good
Yeah.
time, right? And
Yeah.
so he's on stage. I mean, he's not that he's not doing a lot, right? DJing
Yeah.
is its own art, but it also doesn't have to be. And a lot of times people are not doing so much crazy stuff up there. They're mixing between two tracks and adding some effects. And a lot of the energy that is needed to keep the crowd happy just comes from you, not from what you're doing, right? It's not like you're doing a crazy complex guitar solo.
Right.
So you just have to throw down and share your energy, share your passion on stage, and that is entertaining to watch.
Man, you got me thinking about a lot of things, because with that statement, because it's so true. When I start thinking about the creators that are out there that are just creating for the sake of creating and are having fun, and how infectious that feels watching or listening to somebody having no expectations of a monetary goal or to sell you on anything. Yet I find creators that get into the space that often fail and are just go down the path of disappointment are the ones that are trying to monetize an audience right out the gate or trying to monetize a podcast, etc. But for the ones that actually get here behind the mic in front of a camera and just do it from a genuine place, to do it with so much positive energy and to do it because they're just want to be generous and give to an audience and just have fun with it. There's something really beautiful about that. And ultimately, that leads to bigger opportunities for that creator simply by just having the courage to show up and just having fun and just sharing and documenting the journey. And I think I'm glad you mentioned that because I think when I even have client calls, everything is about even in this world like monetize and profitable. And I'm like,
Hmm. Hmm.
but you got it has to come from a good place first and foremost. That's why I'm like, build brand, then attract the audience, then you monetize because branding comes from like the core, like that's essence, that's spiritual. And I'm glad you brought that up, man, because I think that's a lesson that often a lot of early stage creators miss. So thank you for
Yeah.
mentioning that, man.
Yeah, because we want to have the result. We
Mm,
do need, if it's going to be sustainable. I mean, a lot of people are working another job, and it's like,
yeah.
how can I replace this? So
Yep.
I get that, and I go through that too. And you're so right. There's there's an energy that gets mixed into that can muddy the waters, and sort of um, interfere with the message. And it's almost like a leap of faith, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you trust yourself and your expression, you trust your passion, will that return? And that's the adventure to go on.
Would you say, Kaylee, that your love for entrepreneurship started when you were early on with making music? Like, what was the beginning stages of like, okay, this is a whole different world. This is what I want to do. I know it comes with a lot of hardships, but I want to do this. When was that moment? Share with us that moment.
Feels like that moment happens every day, to be honest.
I can relate to that, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, if I'm being real,
It's like question that like every week. It's like, man, do I really want to like? Is this?
could I just get a salary job and some benefits
I
here?
seriously, that's
Love
real
some
talk. That's real
dental.
talk. That's real talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, actually, living in Austin, it's amazing. As a musician, they have insurance for musicians. For
Oh,
like,
right on.
I get basically free dental just by being part of this nonprofit called HAM in
Oh, right
Austin.
on, man.
Mad shout out to HAM,
Okay.
HAM.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, this sounds a little corny, but there's a part of it where I've always been geared that way. Like, I remember
Mhm.
being 4 and selling my toys. I lived on a high school boarding school campus growing up, and so I would sell my toys to different people. Like, I'd have, let's say, a hacky sack or something, and I would try and sell it to the high schoolers, so I could buy candy and more toys. Or I would set up like a little movie theater in my mom's living room with TV and like fruit on chairs and try and like charge a ticket fee. So
That's
there's
it.
components. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's components of me trying to create some irresistible offer from a young age. But it I remember the first time I sold a high ticket coaching package. That was a big
Mhm.
moment, because before then I was purely freelancing, and those were great
Yeah.
moments. It's awesome. Like, even when I was 16, I was making websites for people. So I knew that it's like, okay, I had skills, I could sell them, people
Mhm.
would pay me to do it. But you're in a certain kind of dynamic doing that.
Yeah.
When I sold my first coaching program, which was a podcast launch program for like $3,000, that obliterated
Mhm.
my limiting beliefs about what was possible in terms of how I valued my time and how I structured my services and all that. And then from there, it's been increasingly, different ceilings being shattered. But that was a moment where I thought that there's more possible than I had previously understood. And it felt like a good sign. And it's not just about the money, it's about the feasibility of growing a business, right? It's like, okay, if I could do this, I could hire these people, I could scale
Right.
this to this kind of thing. And also people get enough value out of just my expertise and my time, and I don't have to necessarily trade my hour for
Mm-hmm.
a certain amount of money. I could trade the transformation and the value for it. And that was inspiring and continues to be. Whenever I sign on a new client, there is an element of like, okay, this is feasible and sustainable and exciting. So yeah.
You know, I reached out to you because we have a lot of similarities in not only music in our past, but also because we're very multi-passionate creatives. And I've seen you have a successful podcast, and I was listening to the last podcast as well, Amplify What You Want, right? Or What You Love is the podcast, I think. And then I saw you doing that. And then, seeing you evolve as an entrepreneur where you were really tailoring your services for podcasters, people who are launching podcasts, and then watching that evolve into like a content marketing strategy, right? I'm curious to know like the evolution from podcaster to entrepreneur, and kind of what are some of the things that you have learned about yourself as an entrepreneur in the content marketing space since you first started.
It's interesting you bring that up because I actually feel like I did in reverse. I felt like I was
Hmm.
doing entrepreneur, now I'm podcaster. So I started
Hmm.
what's now called Amplify What You Love, used to be called Be On Air.
I remember that.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and that's where when you came on, and
Hmm.
the concept of that show is I want to make a podcast about podcasting to help podcasters start a
Hmm.
podcast. And that's for my agency, Podcast Farm. And I always knew I wanted to also talk to cool people about what they do. I wanted to have an
Hmm.
actual valuable show, uh, valuable in a deeper sense than just like a business tool. And so I did that for many episodes, but then what started to happen was I felt boxed in by that, and I was like, no, I just want to amplify the voices of people whose work inspires me, motivates me, and who I think the world should hear more of. And I want it to be a tool to meet them, a container to have intentional conversations with,
Yeah.
and really just a passion project. I was not seeing it ROI in terms of bringing in leads. What I've learned since then is that podcasts are oftentimes not a lead generating
Hmm.
mechanism. They're a lead nurturing
That's
mechanism, and they're a
correct.
credibility mechanism. And
Hmm.
so that also explains some of the shift to content marketing, because that's better for lead gen. It's also not the best way to do it, but it is a powerful way to do it when it works, right? When you can attract people just by sharing value and content, those leads are much warmer. But I actually felt like I got into the passion for podcasting and interviews a little bit more later. Like it was a business goal at first, and now as I've rebranded to Amplify What You Love, I only interview people that I want to talk to, and I never interview people to maybe get a client out of it, or to try and stay on brand with the podcasting world. It's purely for joy and interest, and I always think about my audience, so it's not only selfish, but it's really meant like, what is this conversation going to do for the world, for my community? How can it make an impact? How can it make a difference? Who am I amplifying? There's a huge responsibility there.
Mm.
And I'm even pretty burnt out with social media in general, to be completely honest. Like, I have my own qualms with short form and the attention deficit
Mm.
issue that it sort of perpetuates. And long form is special, right? When you actually sit down and you give someone 45 minutes to 3 hours of your time to really hear what they're trying to say, I think you get a lot more from it than a 1 minute clip. And ultimately it's about that human connection, right? Community. I mean, the reason why podcasts are so interesting is because you're in the room with two people connecting, and maybe you would never have gotten that level of depth with someone. Like, if they're famous, you would never have sat in a room with them for 3 hours. And that's also why I think it would be great if the presidents all had to do like 3 to 4 hour podcasts, where, because it's hard to hold a mask up for
Love
too
that.
long. So
Right. And we have seen podcasts, and that's one of the things where people do
yeah.
take off the mask, and really, get real about what they represent, who they are. I'm curious to know, man. You're old school as well, and the fact that when you launched the podcast, it was in a traditional format. It was audio only, and then now we're seeing the evolution of podcasting get into video podcasting, which is this right here is actually new to me. I've always played with the idea of video podcasts, but I'm old school, MP3, audio only, and I think there's always going to be room for that, right? I think there's audio storytelling has its own leverage, and I do feel like there's a lot of space for audio room or audio only content. But now we're seeing it evolve, and now it's like YouTube and video. And I know you're a big advocate for video marketing as well. Curious to know your take on the evolution of podcasting when you first started to where we're seeing it now in 2023, and where do you see it going moving forward?
Yeah. Well, and also just to give you props. You've been in this longer than me. You had multiple podcasts before I ever started mine. So you would know more than me in many ways. And when I started, I actually did start with video too. So it's always been both,
Yeah.
which has
That's
provided
right. Yeah,
challenges.
be on air. That's right. It was video,
Yeah,
right?
like
Yeah, yeah.
there's video of us on
That's right.
YouTube.
That's
So if
right. That's
anyone
right.
wants to check out
We'll link that
Ozeal
up.
from like 2 years late ago, you can go check that out. But yeah, I mean, it's changed even since then. Even the micro content trends that we
Yeah.
used to use back then are so different now. And I think that we want to engage all the senses. The idea of marketing, there's this level of enticement, right? You want to draw people in, and if you can engage all their senses, that's always good. So video has audio, it has visual. It would be great if you could like make smells come out of the screen somehow. But audio will always have a place. We could be flying around in levitating cars, UFOs, whatever, and we'll all need to still, just listen and look at
Right.
other things. It's less information. I feel like video is more potential stress on the body, right? It takes
Mm.
calories to input light and to process that. And if you just listen to audio, you could be doing other things. So there's always a place for it, but it's definitely changed. And what I have found, I'm very curious your thoughts on this, man, with a lot of the clients, because I still launch audio only podcasts.
Mhm.
I launch video audio podcasts. Once you do that, you don't just get thousands of followers like you used to be able to when you would put out a new podcast because there was less competition. So then you're approaching having to market that podcast. And if you only have audio, how are you supposed to do that? Make an image, make a text post. It's not generally enough in this era of the craziest AI visual effects happening with like, OnlyFans models on every other swipe with like cat videos galore. It's like you're competing against that and you're like, hey, go listen to this audio
Yeah.
file. So it's very hard, and it's not impossible. It just requires really good positioning so that you're really
Yes.
speaking to your target market. But most people then still need to approach the video thing. So there's creative solutions, right? You could pull the audio and put B-roll and other kinds of footage over it. That's a thing. But it's so much better if you can show the conversation and show the faces. And there's so many great podcasts that blow up because of these viral little clips. So I think that's really why so many people have been just taking advantage of video. And YouTube is an amazing monetization platform. So when people are monetization minded, they need to be thinking about YouTube. And then YouTube launched Shorts, which really changed the game, and it's a great way to blow up quicker. It's not like a given that you will, but you'll notice if you have a YouTube channel and you're not posting shorts, the quickest way to grow is just start making shorts and double down on that, and you will grow your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So there's a massive opportunity in vertical video to promote podcasts, but then you don't even need to make a podcast anymore. That's the funny thing. It's like now you can make short form vertical
Mhm.
videos, and that serves as a micro funnel to get people into your world, whether that's a subscription or a Calendly or a free thing. It's just if you really truly connect and provide value to a well-defined target market, and you position your offer or what you do well,
Mhm.
and you make good quality content that kind of fits in with the algorithms were needs or the algorithm's requirements, it's likely that some of those clips will pop off and reach at least tens of thousands. And then that can serve as like a little bit of a funnel to bring people into your world. And if you do that consistently for a long time, people begin to know, like, and trust you. And when they know, like, and trust you, you become the only option for them to buy from or to work with. So there's so many creators out there. There's so many coaches and consultants out there, and you can see them doing this. You can reverse
Yeah.
engineer it. Go to their social media, look at what they're doing. They're most likely doing vertical video, and they have free workshops or low ticket workshops, and then they get you into that, and then they can upsell you on something more long term or deeper work with them.
It's interesting you say about not everybody needs to start a podcast. I'm a big, I'm big on that as well. I'm actually having a conversation with a creative last week, and we're talking about the state of podcasting, and I was mentioning this one podcast guru expert saying that everybody should start a podcast. It was his ad. Everybody should start a podcast. I'm like, oh no, I don't believe in that. Not everybody, but I love the fact that you're bringing in a solution, an alternative for creators out there that are not necessarily ready to commit to a podcast. Because I do agree with you, Kaylee, that it is podcasts are best when they're long form conversations. Even though the data shows that people are listening to shorter form content, which that says a lot. Because the attention span, and they're probably listening to a 20-minute podcast episode because they want to get to the short form content and TikTok and everything else that they're bombarded with. So I understand that, but for like the essence of building, trust and developing that deeper relationship with your listener and your audience, I do feel like a long form podcast is the way to go. But for business owners and creators out there that are just want to tap into the feeling of being interviewed and showcasing their thought leadership, I'm with you, man. I feel like the landscape has changed since when we started, in that the marketing is heavy into short form content. And, for creators out there, they should consider starting a mini, podcast vibe short form series where they're pumping out content consistently and developing their presence. And then you can start a podcast and now you can funnel them from there. I've just been thinking about the strategy of how that works. And I wanted to talk to you about that because I know that's the work that you've been doing lately. Is that I'm want to assume that you're doing less podcast launches these days and doing more short form video content. Where are you at with
Yeah.
that, man?
Yeah. Let's jam on that.
Let's
There's a
jam
lot of
on
good
that.
stuff in there for
Yeah.
sure. So I do think I'm doing less podcast launches still, but like launched 2 last month. So it still happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Of
But
course.
I agree with you. What I've been trying to tell people, actually, I actively dissuade people from starting podcasts often when the reasons aren't right. So what I like to
Hmm.
say is the best reason to start a podcast is because you want to be a podcaster. Because
Preach.
it's a crazy journey and it takes a long time and it's expensive in terms of time and resources over the long term, which is what you need to be in it for. And you need to be in it for the long term. So when I hear businesses come to me and they're only looking at it as like a marketing tool, I just want to go deeper and understand what are their goals and what are they
Yeah.
actually trying to do with that podcast, or even individuals and solopreneurs. What are they really trying to do? Because if you can't show up on camera and do 30 minutes every week of videos that are 1 minute long, then you cannot do 100 episodes of podcasting. So
Mm.
so it's like lower the bar, get out there, go where people are. Because like me launching a podcast right now is essentially going into a big empty room and talking.
Mm.
I have to go get people to come into the room to listen to
Mhm.
me. So putting video out on social media is going to a big crowd and starting to say, "Hey, I'm going to start speaking in 30 minutes. We're going to
Mhm.
talk about this, this, and this." Then that room won't be empty when I start speaking. So even if you want to start a podcast, there's no reason not to start with shorter stuff.
Mm.
Now, the caveat there, which you're well aware of, is there's a power to having a conversation as the mechanism by which you create content. And that's what I've basically pivoted to almost entirely. Which it's what I call for my company like the 1 hour a week content
Mhm.
machine. And the idea behind that is, how do we create months of content, video content, reels, vertical video, where you're sharing your ideas and passions and what your company or business does or what your offer does? How do we make that easy for people in only an hour a week? So podcasts are great for that, right? You interview each other. Even this show, we could cut so many clips from this that would be helpful to me in me sharing my ideas. So I do think there's value in that. I think that the way that that's structured needs to be intentional, because oftentimes these sort of flexible conversations are not that easy to clip sometimes, unless you're a really good speaker or you're really concise. They can get very long-winded, they can
Mhm.
meander, and without the context it can be hard. You'll generally get many good ones, but what I've done is I just remove the pressure of a podcast and I interview people for an hour. And at least in an hour, we get 15 clips, if not more. Sometimes it's 20. And while I ask them questions and it's sort of like a list of content ideas, we also work on the hook. How do we make a clip that is designed for the audience? How do we actually speak to the audience rather than just speaking to each other? And that has yielded some really awesome results, tens and tens of thousands of views, clients closing really big contracts, $20,000 contracts because of these little clips. And so I think there's a way to hack the podcasting world if all you're really after is audience. So it's just like,
Mhm.
what are the priorities and what are the goals? If your goal is to have a podcast because you understand that conversation is transformative and you want a vehicle to talk to some people that you've never dreamed of being able to, and you want to build a network, and you want to just be a podcast host because that's something you want, that's a super great reason. But if you're after sort of business metrics and KPIs that are all centered around your offer and things like that, you may have a better mechanism at your disposal in short form content, and in maybe be leveraging someone on your team to interview you for an hour a couple times a month, and then chop that up and interview you, not with the goal for long term, but with the goal not with the goal for long form, but with the goal for short form.
I think you broke it down. It can't be broken down anymore like that, Kaylee. I mean, you broke it down, bro. That's it. That's it. I love that. Everything you just said, completely 1000% agree. Man, I'm gonna have to clip that. That's a clip. That's a
It's a
clippable.
meta clip. It's a
That's a
clip
meta
about
clip right
making
there.
clips. But you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
bro.
I think
I
the
feel you.
issue is scripts, and people can come off really authentic and fake. And so there's something about like this, you and I talking,
Hmm.
that is more real and more
Yeah.
human. And so we don't want to lose that. And then also we want to make sure that it's going to help, it's efficient and optimized, especially if you're looking at doing this like regularly for your business. So yeah, I think both things can be accomplished. I think you can use this sort of conversational long form to create a whole bunch of short form. If you know that you're not really trying to put out a podcast, you don't even have to brand it as such. You just
Yeah.
make it your thought leadership content.
Perspective. And that's a testament. Okay, I want to give you props right there because I was just listening to everything you just dropped. And that's a testament to becoming a pro consultant and really understanding the landscape of content marketing, but more specifically podcasting, because a lot of people, and I think 2023, it's the landscape has changed in regards to what a podcast represents in this digital ecosystem, whether as an entrepreneur who is trying to build brand, or a business, B2B business who's using it as a marketing tool. It's about asking the right questions. And I think that's something that I believe that anybody who's watching this, who's in the podcasting space, who's an expert, a thought leader, guru, whatever you want to call yourself, to be able to understand, not to say, hey, everybody should start a podcast and then you want to sell your course. I mean, I there's a bunch of that going on, but really understanding the essence and why somebody would want to start a podcast. So it's about asking the right questions. I agree with you, Kaylee. I do believe that podcasting has tremendous value. We're seeing download numbers go up. The data is showing that audio is becoming a thing. I'm not sure if you read recently, but it showed that recently in a study that now podcasting is it's more listened to than radio. So now it's surpassed radio. So the attention is there, the retention is there. Advertisers are spending bukus of money. It's podcasting isn't going to go anywhere, folks. But what we're saying here is to be able to have perspective and have intention going into content marketing, because podcasting has a space, but it's more of a nurture relationship builder because you like to go deep into these conversations. And then there's short form content, which is a little bit more strategy, and it's more of an ROI in regards to KPIs, and you can track that a lot more versus audio. Because we know, anybody who's been podcasting for a minute, we know, Kaylee, that audio is very hard to scale and it's hard to grow. And if you're not in it for the right reasons, then you're going to pod fade away like everybody else does.
Yeah, and it's like you have to get a big audience. You have to have
Bro,
thousands of
yeah.
downloads per episode of not some offshore promotional company that you paid to get you download numbers. You have to have real humans who are willing to sign up for a survey that you post, and you
Mm,
actually get 1,000 real responses, let's say. If
yeah.
you really want to monetize audio, like that's kind of the size. And I don't know what you see, but I often see people kind of plateau out, myself included, by the way. My podcast is not that successful in a metric standpoint. It's been very successful in other ways.
Mhm.
Like my business is doing fine just because the podcast doesn't have massive numbers, but that's because my business has its own marketing outreach, cold email, organic outreach, and organic content. But getting plateaued around 100 downloads per month is like so common. I see that all the time because it's not that easy to build a 100-person audience. It's not that easy to build a 1,000-person audience. But that's really what we need to be aiming for, is that whole like 1,000 true fan thing. Who I'm blanking on who wrote that book, but that idea of the 1,000 true fans is really accurate. And you said something else that I thought was really, you were talking about the question,
Mm,
and like having a little bit of a conflict of interest of like, hey, everyone should start a podcast, and then selling a program. I've been there. And then
yeah.
even now, everyone should just make short form content. And by the way, here's my service for
Mhm.
how to make short form content, which I totally have. And I'm personally conflicted. There's a part of me that feels like a drug dealer. Like I'm helping to create more of these social media drugs, and I'm a little disenchanted with social media personally right now. And I know for a fact, because I've watched clips that have made an impact on me, so I know that it's possible. But it's a dicey space, and I I feel like social media is not particularly good for my mental health.
Mm.
And so I was wondering, is there space? Could I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you, yeah, like how do you like not give up on your business? How do you
Mm.
not give up on creating content? Like where is your juice and inspiration coming from? Because sometimes it's just like I just want to like put it down and
Yeah.
not make anything for anyone or for any other reason than I just want to.
Yeah. I think, mm, knowing the intention behind the value that I'm trying to share with my clients and I'm trying to help them with. So, I am a big believer of business owners and people that are very passionate from a teaching perspective, like teachers that are business owners that are having trouble marketing their thought leadership or having trouble show up on social media. So I'm very passionate about helping people master and market their message and knowing that there's value in what you're doing, Kaylee, with the short form video content marketing, with the podcasting, and knowing that not this is not for everybody. And I think it's just owning that, right? Saying, hey, listen, this is not for everybody. And just being completely honest about who this is for and who this is not for. And being very mindful of the message that I'm putting out. I'm with you, man. I have a very tug of war, love hate relationship. I won't say hate, but this social media sometimes I get jaded, and sometimes I struggle with my own content marketing output as well as a personal brand, as somebody who believes in this. And I've noticed, like, I'm just like, man, I'm not like really feeling this. Like, this is a struggle for me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then I started feeling like a hypocrite. I'm like, here I'm trying to help clients, but I feel like sometimes playing the back row and the producer and the strategist, and I'm able to see things. But I also struggle being the front man and kind of being out there. So I'm with you, man. I struggle with this as well. But reverting back to your question, I do feel like really getting back into like why I'm doing this and the value that I'm trying to help my clients with is what kind of keeps me motivated and going. And there's some creativity behind that as well that kind of gets me really exciting to move forward with what we're pursuing.
I appreciate that so much, man. I feel like less alone hearing that, and it's not easy also to put ourselves out there. Like that brings its own stuff. I have a question that I like to ask and pose to people, so I'll pose it to the audience, which
Yeah.
is, do you want to be famous? And everyone has different understandings of what the word famous means, but you could also say, do you want to be well known? Do you want to be seen and recognized as a leader in your space? It's very interesting to notice what comes up and why, and really think about, are your goals aligned with that answer too, right? Because you say, oh no, I want thousands and thousands of downloads on my podcast, but no, I don't want to be famous. Well, it's like, don't you?
Yeah.
So why don't you want to be famous? Why do you want to be famous? And yeah, it's very interesting little prompt to kind of go into, because as soon as we start creating more content, it's vulnerable,
Yes.
and we do be, and like the worst best thing that could happen is we blow up in a way, and then it's
Yeah.
like, well, how valuable is privacy? How valuable
Mm-hmm.
is not packaging everything beautiful in my life for social media? Is there some purity and value to just keeping stuff for my own present moment and for the
Mm.
people that I'm with in real non-digital life? There's so much there.
What do you want to be known for?
Mm, great question. What do I want to be known for? Yeah, I would love to be known for using the resources that the universe blessed me with, and the skills and abilities and what I've learned from my mentors, using everything I have to simultaneously help to shine a spotlight, turn up the volume, amplify really important, powerful, necessary, needed topics and people and organizations and messages,
Mm.
that I use my platform to do that. And at the same time that we had a really amazingly fun time, and it was exciting, entertaining, and creative. So my name Kaylee actually means play in Sanskrit. And I
Mm.
got to this point once on a cliff in Colorado. I do little work retreats sometimes where I unplug and like go focus. And I was working on what's my highest potential. And as simple as it sounds, part of my highest potential is to play with my friends.
Mm.
I'm just an adult now and a business owner. And so playing has gotten a little bigger and more expensive, but it's like I want to be known for making really good games for my friends and for the world to play. And I think that would make me feel happy, like if my games could positively impact people. And this ties into what you said, this idea of like, if I'm clear on the intention behind what I'm doing and the value I'm bringing, that does help clean up the energy
Mhm.
there. And it reminds me of a little video I posted recently where I got the feedback. We posted music on YouTube, and I got the feedback in a comment that someone listens to that song and it helps them to avoid their suicidal tendencies. And I was like, wow, that's crazy, like that a song could help someone like that. So there's a price to my selfishness too, of not wanting to be seen. And as a
Yeah.
caveat, everyone
Yeah.
has a right to privacy, but
Yeah.
what if we gave our gifts fully? And what if we didn't get in our way? And what if we were willing to be seen as service?
Mm.
I think some really magical things can happen. So that just reminded me of what you were saying, of like getting clear behind the intention behind it is
Yes.
maybe the key to working with social media and working with all these tools.
Yeah. You highlighted something that I've been thinking about, and when I struggle with, writer's block or creativity or putting out content, is reminding myself. And I heard a mentor one time share with me is that you are someone's medicine, and to show up and say, you can help somebody else. Stop being so selfish. If you are, a born leader and we have something, yeah, we're all message makers and we're all teachers. Share it with the world. Like, get out of your way. It's okay. Like, that right there is someone's medicine. And that, like your music, can make a positive impact. You just don't know who's listening or who needs that medicine. And it's like that reminder, that right there, what you just said, Kaylee, could be the thing that we need to, you and I and everybody else watching or listening, remind ourselves that we are someone's medicine, and stop being selfish. Let's get out of our way. Let's put the content out there because someone needs to hear it or listen to it. I think it's super important to be reminded of that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's so true. And there's a lot that can kind of can kind of connect to that, of this idea of like one person's ordinary is another person's extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
Show your
Yeah.
work. This idea. So to make it simple for people trying to get into content, I guarantee you do something every day that will blow someone else's mind, and you don't even, it's almost invisible to you. You don't see it because it's just what you do. And if we can document a little more and show the work, and again, I'm blanking on, there's a book called Show Your Work, and it's forgive me, I don't.
Austin Kleon. Austin
Thank
Kleon.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, show behind the scenes. That's actually sometimes more interesting than the work itself, is how you did it. Show the journey. Gary Vee talks about that too, is document, don't create. And so I think like an easy place to start for everyone who wants to ramp up their content is to show the process, show the journey, show behind the scenes, and remember that, just like you're saying, like you could be someone else's medicine. It's really hard to remember what it was like not to know. And there's that thing of the curse of knowledge. Once you know something, you kind of assume everyone else does. I run into this daily. It's really hard to see ourselves and to see the journey we've been on. And maybe this ties back to the origin story. When we know the journey we've been on, we also value it more. And we can understand that to someone who's not been on that journey, they could use a little piece of knowledge that you maybe got 20 years ago that seems like a throwaway to you, but maybe that's the key to their journey and the medicine that they need. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because it's a great reminder.
Mm. As we land the plane here, Kaylee, I want to ask you, this is a question that I would ask all my guests on Creator Factor. If there's one creator factor that every creator should learn, master, or understand, what would that be?
Hmm. Yeah, you let me know you were going to ask me this, and so I was thinking about it, and there's like two directions I could go with it. Ultimately, though, I think this is what my dad used to tell me all the time, which was follow your heart. And as corny as it sounds, like I just think there's actual truth to it. If you follow what you love and you follow what you're passionate about and you amplify that, which is why I've named my whole thing Amplify What You Love. Like if you follow and you turn up the volume and you stoke the flames on what you love, it leads to a fulfilling experience, period. So no matter what success or outcomes, you will be more fulfilled in your life. Um, that's very esoteric. A super practical thing is just use storytelling, like study storytelling, leverage storytelling, and become really familiar with what makes a good story and how you can use that in all your content, because that will make whatever your heart message is, that will present it in a way that people can receive and pick up and remember and act on.
That was beautiful. You're a great communicator. I'm not sure if anybody has mentioned that to you, but you're a great communicator, brother, and it's been an honor. Podcast-farm.com. You can follow my man, the Podcast Farm, on IG, and Kaylee Marks on Instagram as well. We'll make sure that we link it up in the show notes. Kaylee, my man, it's been a true pleasure, and I'm honored to be able to have you on the podcast. This is something that when I started the Creator Factor, I just simply just wanted, like you, speak with creators that are amplifying what they love. And just simply because I wanted to have conversations to be able to understand where I'm at in my journey and as I'm evolving as a creator, as an entrepreneur. But I know there are many creators out there that are watching and listening to this podcast that are also that are in the trenches, going through the same thing, going through the challenges, discovering new aspects of themselves as creators, as entrepreneurs. And brother, I know you were going to get spiritual and deep with us. So I was like, I need to get Kaylee Marks on the show. So I'm glad we were able to make that happen, because you dropped some gems and we really do appreciate it, brother.
Ozeal, it's always awesome to talk to you. You are an inspiring force out there. Whenever I see you post, you always bring a smile to my face. You exude positive energy. So thanks for having me on. Thanks for what you're doing here. And just stoked to be connected again, man.
Thank you, brother.